Hello and welcome to the Free Black Girl Podcast. This is a space for joyful healing, learning, and collective liberation. My name is Najma Ahmed, and you are listening to a series of mini podcast episodes called Lessons from Liberation. If you've been here before, I need you to go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and leave a 5-star review if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. I want the podcast to continue to reach more people, and that really helps me out. Also, share this podcast with someone you think needs to hear it. And if you are new, welcome. I am so happy to have you here. I shared in my first season of the podcast all the ways in which I got free from unhealed trauma, people pleasing, and really from any person, place, or thing causing me to betray myself. Now, these lessons from liberation are based on what I learned after asking myself, now what? Last week, I shared about understanding when is enough enough? When are we striving for something that seems unattainable and undefinable? How will we know that we've won? That led me to think about the question, when have we done enough healing? When is it time for less healing and more embodiment? Let's jump into this week's lesson. First, I want to preface that this episode is specifically targeted towards those who have spent years doing deep healing work, but it can also provide perspective for those who are just starting out as well. So many of us may identify with what's known as the archetype of the wounded healer. That is individuals who are using their own personal experiences of pain and trauma and dysfunction to understand and to guide others as we heal. But what I've realized, and probably what I've known all along, but not necessarily known how to articulate, but it's that we were never meant to stay in the wound. It's a very interesting feeling, though, when you spend so much time healing, talking about healing, thinking about healing. But when you finally come to a place where you realize that even though you may have a scar, the wound is closed. All of that energy that you poured into restoring yourself, to raising yourself, to protecting yourself, where does it go now? And I think the energy is meant to be put into living, into embodiment, and moving through the fears that you have around doing that living. Putting your energy into getting out of your head and into the body. Sometimes I think we get into this healing stage and it becomes our identity, says the woman who has a whole podcast and platform based on talking about my healing, right? But what I've realized is that we know enough. We've thought about it enough. We've understood enough. It's time to embody all of that wisdom. There's such a hypervigilance that comes when we are healing because we're examining ourselves. We're understanding ourselves. We come home to our bodies and we're learning our rhythms and our triggers. And all of those things are very necessary. I don't want to make light of that phase of the healing. But let me give you an example. So when I first started out on my fitness journey a few years ago, I was like, okay, let me get me a nutritionist. Let me get a trainer. Let me really get some help to understand what's happening inside of my body. Looking at all of my numbers, going to the doctor, checking out my resting heart rate, all those things. Understanding what is it that I'm supposed to be eating, and I'm counting, macronutrients, all of that. And I had my Fitbit and I was working out and I knew that I needed to burn a certain number of calories every day, that I wanted to walk a certain number of steps every day, to sleep a certain amount of hours. All helpful to establish that baseline of information around my health. But within the last year or so, I actually stopped wearing my Fitbit. I stopped tracking my calories and working out in the same way. It's been more intuitive movement, intuitive practices. Number one, I stopped wearing a Fitbit, though, because I just didn't want to be tracked anymore. I feel like we live in a society of hyper surveillance, right? But I also realized what constantly tracking myself was doing to me. It was telling me when I wasn't good enough, when I didn't walk enough, or telling me that I didn't sleep well, even if I felt rested. If my Fitbit said I didn't sleep good enough, well, I didn't sleep good enough. And now there's something else on my list that I can work towards fixing about myself. But after years of doing this work, I realized I also don't need a Fitbit to tell me what's going on in my body anymore. This is not meant for medical advice. Please go to the doctor. But I know what foods make me feel nourished. I know when I eat sugar or dairy that in 1 to 2 business days, I'm going to have some pimples popping up on my face. I know what makes me feel lethargic. I know how much water I need to drink or else I'm going to have a headache. I know that if I lay in the bed scrolling on my phone all night that I'm not going to have a peaceful, restful night's sleep. So the point of healing isn't to constantly being under self-surveillance. It's to learn yourself so you can establish that baseline of living, of sustaining, of thriving. Then you can maintain, then you can live. Because you've gotten to know yourself, because your trust and your ability to guide yourself continues to grow. You know that you don't need to be constantly checking in and analyzing. But this is also a moment by moment conversation that we have with ourselves to ask, what would the healed version of me do in this scenario? And then doing it. For instance, so last weekend, someone invited me out to a block party for creatives. And I've been wanting more community, more new friends. But in that moment, I had told myself I was tired and I didn't feel like talking to people, and my introvert was taking over and my social battery was low. All of these things that I've told myself over the years when I was about to cancel some plans on somebody. But I looked outside and the sun was out. And I had already been resting all day. I was laying in the bed, drinking some tea, reading my book. And I asked myself, isn't this what you've been asking for? Isn't this what you've been manifesting? Are you going to stay in this energy of thinking about this life where you have community and new friends? Or are you going to go live it? So I got up and I rode my bike to the block party. It was such a beautiful bike ride too. And it was so much fun. I met a lot of new people. We painted a community mural together. I had some beautiful conversations with some elders and like-minded folks. And this also comes up in our work that we do and the work that we avoid because we've told ourselves that we're afraid of it or that it's overwhelming or that we don't know enough. For instance, I needed to clean up some financial records recently and really get a hold of my numbers to look at what I need and to make a plan for how I want to get there. And in the past, I would have just kept thinking about it and feeling like I wasn't prepared or that I didn't know enough. But again, in this moment, I asked myself, what would the healed version of me do? And I sat down and I did it. And I felt so much relief afterwards. It wasn't as difficult or as scary as I had made it out to be in my mind. Funny how that works. Think of it like this. So y'all know by now, you should, if you've listened to this podcast, that I love a metaphor or an analogy at this point. But when you're doing your initial healing work, you're basically getting a PhD in yourself. There's your intensive coursework, which correlates to all those first few years in your journey of deep healing work. Then in your PhD, you go into the exam period. In healing, you are tested many, many, many times. Next, in your PhD program, you identify your dissertation topic and proposal. And at this point in your healing, you start to identify who you are now after moving through these tests. In your PhD, there's more research. Once you've moved into this new identity in your healing journey, you spend time getting to know yourself as this version and seeing what is true for you now. In your PhD, you take that research and you write your findings into your dissertation. In your healing, you reach the point where you become confident in stating who you are and what you believe about yourself. In your PhD, you defend your dissertation and you graduate. In your healing, you graduate when you stand in the knowing of who you are and set boundaries to defend from anyone or anything in opposition to that. And yes, I'm going to be a lifelong learner. And yes, this healing is a lifelong journey. But I'm not going to have to keep going to class forever. I got the degree. And now I want to go out and put it into practice. I'm going to go out and live. I'm going to go out and take all these tools, all this wisdom that I've gained, and embody it. One of the things that will always stay with me that my therapist said to me one time was, what keeps us safe in our trauma can harm us as we heal. So when we're in that space of navigating our traumas, those deep wounds, those initial core wounds, it's required of us to be hypervigilant. It required us to be introspective. It required us to constantly examine our environment for threats, especially if you grew up having to anticipate the moods of your caregivers or people that you love so that you could stay safe and receive love in return. Or in adulthood, working and having to navigate this world, particularly in the body of a Black woman, and having to analyze your supervisor or your partner in any way for love, approval, and survival. It is self-protection to be hypervigilant. But when we get to a certain place in our healing, it is knowing that even if or when things happen, things that in the past that may have rocked us to our core, that we now have the tools to care for ourselves. That we don't have to be so guarded anymore. As we heal, we can't keep fussing over and over protecting the wound. It's been stitched up. Trust that the work that has been done will hold. Otherwise, we will miss out on the actual living of our lives. Understanding that if we do lose the job or lose the partner or whatever it is that we are afraid of losing, when those things move out of our lives, that we know that is not a reflection on our worth, that we know that we will be okay, that whatever we feel that we have lost is actually making room for what is meant to stay, that we have the evidence, we have the proof every single day that we can heal ourselves. We don't set out wanting to feel that pain. We don't set out wanting to experience those losses again. But it's in the knowing that even if we do, we're going to be all right. More than all right. We're going to continue to fly. I want you to take out your journal. I want you to write a letter to the healing version of you. The one who has been digging deep. The one who led you back home to yourself. The one who fought all those battles that nobody will ever know about. I want you to write a letter to them, and I want you to acknowledge all the work they've done. I want you to sit with any feelings that come up and let them flow. I want you to thank them. I want you to reflect on how far you've come. And I want you to think about all the things you've learned, all the tools they've gathered for you. Thank them for their service and let them know they can go lay down now. They can go sit in the back seat of the car. They can stretch out, roll the windows down, and let the air blow through their hair. Your healing self doesn't have to drive anymore. Every now and then, they may pop up as a backseat driver when you might forget the directions just to remind you of which way to go. But now, it's time for your healing self just to sit back and enjoy the ride. You have everything that you need. You are everything that you need. But first, show them some love and appreciation in the letter that you write to them. And then I want you to burn the letter. Release it all. You no longer need to carry all of the weight of the healing either. No more pontificating, no more hypothesizing, no more strategizing. Open yourself up and make room for life to surprise you. Be excited by the unknown, because you know that you're equipped to handle whatever you encounter as you continue on your journey. Thank you for listening. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Leave me a comment and a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. I really hope these lessons from liberation help you to grow, as you being in community with me helps me to grow. And as always, I want this to be a conversation. So tell me, what is one way you can get out of your head and into your body?